Hey everyone! What I want to do with this video is show you how to do simple logo removals. The first thing I want to mention before we start the tutorial is that this approach is for simple logo removals. It isn't for the complex ones where there's a bunch of objects passing in front of the given logo. This is more for your wider shots or where there's small items that pass in front of the logo. And the three different ways the three different shots that I'm going to showcase today are these. The first is a slow push forward onto two trucks that have logos. So you'll see there's a logo right here and a logo here. We're going to remove both of those. So it'll end up being something like that. The second option is more similar to like a set extension. We aren't doing a set extension, but it's showing how you can take big objects in a frame and remove them. It's a fairly simple shot. There is some movement in the shot itself. You can see there's a little bit of movement there. And what I end up doing in this shot, something way over the top that I wouldn't normally do, is remove the bridge. So we'll obviously show you how to do that. And the last is showing you a method to do the logo removals when you have objects that pass in front of the logo. It's a fairly simple situation here, but you can see how the final shot has the logo removed. So the first thing that you want to do is track your subject. Because there is movement in this shot, you will need to track the shot so that when you create your overlay image that blocks out the logos, it has a path to follow. Now, before I do any of my tracks, what I do is create a null object which will apply the tracking data to it. And from there, I will rename this to just be tracker 1. For this shot, I'm going to do 2 trackers because the planes that these objects are on are different, so the tracking data will be slightly different. It won't be massively different, so you could potentially get away with 1 tracking point, but for scenarios like this, I definitely recommend having 2 tracking points. I already have my tracker dialog box open here, but if you don't have it open, to open it, all you need to do is go Window, and you'll go down to Tracker and select that, and then it would pop up for you. From here, what you do is you want to make sure that you're at the first frame of your clip, that layer is selected, and then you hit Track Motion. Because the rotation and scale does change because it's a handheld shot or it's an Osmo handheld shot, I know these values do change, so you want to select these 3 options. I will normally select all 3 options no matter what the shot is. I find that it just saves your butt down the line. So once you've done that, you're gonna get these 2 track points that show up. From there, I'll go and select points that are on the object that I want to replace. The best points to select for your tracking points are ones that have more contrast. So for here, you're gonna see you've got a darker color to a lighter color, and that's usually your better tracking points to select. For the second tracking point, I'm gonna go somewhere up in here. What I normally like to do is go kind of close to the edge points of the object I'm replacing, making sure that those tracking points stay in the frame the whole way. And then once you've got those 2 points selected, you'll go and hit Edit Target to make sure you have tracker 1 selected. If you don't, you just got to click this and then navigate to that tracker, hit OK. And then you're going to hit Play, which is then going to go and basically track all the way through the motion of that shot. Once it's completed, you want to go through and make sure that the tracking points don't jump on you. If you select good tracking points, you're not going to have that issue, so you should be good to go. For a shot like this, it'll be rare where your tracking points won't work. All right, once your track is completed, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here to make sure that it worked for us. So as I scrub through, it looks pretty close. They'll then want to go and hit apply, which is going to apply that tracking data to your null object or to your tracker point. Once that's completed, you want to go back to the start of that composition and then export that frame. So go save file frame as, and then name it what you want to name it as. And I'll go truck plate and hit save. And what I'm doing here is basically prepping this file for Photoshop. What you can do is, if you want to use the clone tool inside of After Effects, you can do that. However, based on my workflow and how I like to do these logo replacements, I find I get way better results when I'm inside of Photoshop. And what we'll do now is actually jump into Photoshop, and I'll show you what to do once you have that frame exported. Just close these off real quick. All right, so we'll go File, Open. We'll navigate to that shot, that image that we just exported. And then what we're gonna do is paint out the logos using the clone tool. So this here is the clone tool right here. And then to bring up the size of your brush and hardness, you simply hit Control, click. We'll go to about this size for now, and then hit Option, click, which basically grabs your reference point, and then we'll start painting out that logo. The same thing with this number, and we're done with that. We'll then move over to the other one here, and what I'm going to do for this is I'm actually going to just have this pattern here for the whole thing. I'm going to just go fairly quick, so it will just be a rushed example. In this first frame of the shot, we've removed the logos. Once you've done that, you want to just save this frame. Once that's done, we'll jump back into After Effects, onto our sequence, and bring in that removal. And we'll want to make sure when we do that, that we're on the first frame, and then we can drag this down onto our sequence. And we'll do, because we tracked the van first, we'll do that removal first. So we'll grab the pen tool, making sure that this logo or this layer is selected, and then we're gonna basically cut out what was replaced. Once that's done, we'll then select this layer again, making sure again that we're on the first frame, and we're gonna parent this layer to our tracker. So once that's done, you're gonna see that this layer now tracks with the shot. Once that's done, we're gonna jump in and we're gonna replace that one. So we'll select this one again, go to the first frame, and we're gonna create a second tracker. So layer, new, null object, and then we'll rename this tracker 2. Select this layer again, which is our plate layer, and then track motion. We're gonna select rotation and scale, and then we're gonna move these 2 tracking points onto the vehicle. From here, we'll go edit target and make sure to select tracker 2, and then we're gonna hit play, and it's gonna go and analyze this clip and get all that data for us, so that when we do the replacement, it'll be accurate. All right, so that completed. What we'll do is go to the last frame just to make sure, same spot as it started. After that, then you want to just hit apply, which is going to apply that tracking data. And then we're going to take a second copy of this truck removal and drag it onto the top. And then we'll go back to our first frame, and we're going to chop out that section of the truck that we want to replace. That. And then once that's done, again, we want to go to the parenting option and parent it to tracker 2. And at that stage, we've now replaced the logos or remove the logos in each of those vehicles. Second option that we want to go through is the bridge removal. Very similar principles would apply if you're doing set extensions. I'm going to just quickly run through this since you obviously know how to do it from the previous example. So what I'll do is go layer, new, null object, rename that tracker 1. Go ahead and make sure we track the motion. You'll want to select rotation and scale, and then select, because we're removing the bridge, we want to make sure our tracking points are on the bridge. Similar to the previous example, after the shot was tracked, we then exported the first frame, and then we're going to now bring it into Photoshop. Navigate to that shot, and here's where we get to have a little bit of fun. We're going to go ahead and remove that bridge. And I'm going to just do it again as quick as possible here, just to obviously get through the tutorial. The better job you do at replacing, the more authentic it will look. So we'll start with the pillars. We got rid of that. Then we'll kind of work our way up. Maybe what we'll do actually is we could remove the pillars as if it's a floating bridge. We'll go ahead and try that with this example. So it's a little bit different than the one I showed at the start. All right, so now it is officially a floating bridge. Obviously, it's a little bit brighter down here. If you spent a little more time with it, it might look more realistic. From here, we'll do the same thing as last time. File, save as. And then we'll go bridge, floating. Hit save. And then from here, what we'll do is jump back into After Effects, go to that sequence, and then we're going to bring in the composite we just did, bridge floating. Make sure we're on the first frame, bring this down, and then link this to the tracker, and then we can cut out this here. Because the only object in this frame that's moving is the water, as long as we don't cut out the water, we should be good. So we'll go there. And if you play this back now, we officially have a floating bridge. I'll just jump ahead. So there's that example. And the last example that we'll go through is the most complex out of all three, obviously, and because there is an object that passes in front of the frame, which you'll see happens right about there. So it'll be very similar to how we approached the truck sequence and how we had two separate tracking points and two separate mats that we were working with. We'll be doing the same thing with this. So again, what we want to do, we're going to create a null object. Label this tracker 1. For this one, we'll only have one tracker because we're going to be tracking a point in the frame that's on that same plane. Since it's the same object that we're replacing, you don't need two. And when selecting our points, we're going to want to now just be a little bit careful in where we choose to pick the tracking points. I'm going to just scout this out before we jump into creating the tracking points to see what might work the best. We'll select, for the first, we'll do maybe the S here, edge of that. And then for the other one, we'll do the E. Right there. And then we're just going to hit play and step through it. Once we get to that point where the tracking points are going to be covered over by the pole, that's where we'll stop it and then manually step ahead and we'll manually move those keyframes for the shot. It's key at this stage that you spend a little bit of time doing this, because if this track isn't done right, you're going to notice it because the mat you overlay is going to jump all over the place. So just spend your time on this stage to make sure that the final shot looks as best as it can. All right, so it's getting close to the pole here. What I'm going to do is just hit stop, and then I'm going to manually step this ahead using this button here. And it's key, just make sure you zoom in all the way onto the first tracking point that's gonna be covered. So we'll step it ahead again, still good, step it ahead again, and here is where it's gonna start having issues. So the one thing you're gonna want to do with this, it's gonna be a little bit tricky in making sure that you're moving it to the right spot. But if you use these previous tracking points as a point of perspective, you're seeing how it's almost equally moving through this shot. And I know that I didn't do any jumping camera movements as it crossed over, so I can basically just approximate where this next frame should be. So what I would do it here is, you see it's registering here because it doesn't know where to track that from. All I need to do is move it to approximately where I think that point is, which is there. We'll do the same again. We'll jump ahead. Totally guessing again. I'm gonna say it's there. Do it again. We're gonna say there. Maybe come down a little bit. Jump ahead. Another one. You might, after going through all this, need to come back and refine this, but it's at least a good starting point. Now, what I might actually want to check on, Hills Rose, okay, so that's the S, so it is off a little bit from where I thought it would be. So we're gonna move that back up to there, and then what we'll go back and do is estimate those points to match that. So it would be something like that. Again, it's not perfect, but you get the idea. And then at this stage, we'll see the other one where that's at. The S looks like it's free now. And we'll keep stepping through this. All right, so there you go. The same thing with the E. Bring it to there. Next frame. There. And then there. So you'll see, again, we're off a little bit. So what we would do at this stage is basically guessing, but it's approximating where that would be behind. And there we go. So the same as last time, edit target, make sure it's tracker 1, hit apply. It's gonna apply all that tracking data to that tracker. Gonna jump back to that first frame. Go composition, save frame as, file, rename to Hillsboro's plate, save that, render, jump into Photoshop. We'll open up that frame. Hillsboro's plate, open. And then what we want to do with this is remove this. Always like to zoom out to see if there's any glaring things that are standing out. So that's not horrible. We'll go ahead and hit file, and then we're gonna save this as Hillsboro's logo removal. Hit save. And then jump back into After Effects. Again, it's the same process through each of these. Just adding different steps or more steps through this process as the shots get a little more complex. What we'll do now is bring in that shots that we just worked on. Drag it on top of here. Oops, go here. And then what we will do is do the mask again. What I like to do with this one is just as close as possible. All right, so we have that. We'll then want to make sure we parent it with tracker 1, which is basically our original image with all the tracking data attached to it. And then we can jump through and see the down and dirty removal is done there. Where the question will come in is when this crosses over. So we want to make sure that this pole remains. So there's a few different ways you can do this. What we'll do for this, we'll clean up basically this side of the image first, and then we'll clean up this side after. So we'll go to the point right before the pole crosses over. As you can see, the tracking data is perfect, and as you track through here, the logo is removed. So we'll jump ahead to, we'll say, getting close here. I'm gonna select this layer, hit M for mask, which is basically the path of the mask that you've created, and we're gonna start stepping through here. All right, so we'll say this is the last keyframe that's clean. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna create a keyframe for that point. But what we're gonna do with that is actually bring this over to the edge of the pole and just keep that angle going on it. Bring this over. And then we're gonna step to the next frame. And this is where it gets fun. You're gonna have to do frame by frame, moving this over basically. One trick with this is if you don't want to have to go and manually keyframe everything, is if you were to jump ahead to say here, a little too far, basically right before the edge of it is out, so we're going to say right there, and you drag these 2 points back and line up where you think that roof extends to for the bottom one, and then select this keyframe and bring it over. It's going to animate all the keyframes in between, so you might not have to actually even keyframe all of these places. So we'll just give it a quick test here. You see we still do need to, but at least our angle on the bottom one is a little closer, because you have that point of reference from the last one. So we're going to say right there, jump to here. We need to adjust it again. Here, same thing. It's so close, but I mean, the more precise you are, the more realistic it will be. And then we can scrub through these last frames. All right, so we might actually want to smooth that out a little bit because you do see the edge of that here. So maybe what I can even do is I'll just quickly go through this and try and clean this up. Getting close to the end here. All you see what I'm doing is just going through each frame, seeing if there's any spots that look a little off. All right, once you have all those keyframes completed on the right side, in order to actually remove the logo on the other side, it's just repeating the process that you just did on the one side, except just changing the point or the position of those keyframes. So what I'll do is just finish the left side, and then I'll leave you with the final shots from the tutorial. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching.